You are running your consciousness on a legacy operating system designed for social cohesion rather than strategic dominance, because you are still processing reality through the bottleneck of language. Thinking in words is the cognitive equivalent of dial-up internet in a fiber optic world. It is a linear, low-bandwidth serialization of complex data that forces your brain to slow down to the speed of your tongue. When you narrate your life to yourself, I should do this because, or he said that so I should say, you are engaging in a simulation of communication, not computation. This internal monologue is a shackle. It is a biological leak of massive proportions because language is inherently loaded with the acoustic rot of social conditioning. Words like fair, risk, security, and enough are not objective descriptors of reality. They are emotional triggers installed by the architects of the global server to keep you docile. When you think in words, you are thinking in the code of the slave. You are using the master's tools to try and dismantle the master's house, and it will never work. The sovereign architect must upgrade his cognitive firmware from the semantic layer to the vector layer. You must stop narrating the movie and start calculating the physics of the scene. A vector is a quantity having direction and magnitude. In the context of the resource war, thinking in vectors means visualizing the world as a dynamic map of forces, leverage points, and trajectories. You do not look at a business deal and think, this looks like a good opportunity. That is a sentence. It is vague. It is emotional. Instead, you look at the deal and you see a vector of force. Capital input, X, applied at leverage point, Y, yields trajectory, Z, with resistance, R. This is not a sentence. It is an equation. It is instantaneous. It is spatial. When you think in vectors, you process information in parallel. You see the relationship between the market, the product, the team, and the timing all at once as a single geometric shape in your mind. If the shape is symmetrical and robust, you strike. If the shape is fractured, you pass. This bypasses the slow, doubting, rationalizing part of the prefrontal cortex and taps into the raw processing power of the visual and spatial cortices. The predator does not think in words. The lion does not say to itself, the gazelle is running left, so I should run left. The lion calculates the intercept vector instantly. You must reclaim this primal pre-verbal speed. You must become a predator of opportunity who strikes before the prey has even finished formulating a sentence about its safety. The tyranny of the internal monologue is that it traps you in the past or the future. Words are always about what happened or what might happen. Vectors are always about now. A vector exists in the present moment of tension and release. When you shift to vector thinking, you silence the noise of the ego. The ego lives in the story. I am a failure. I'm successful. I'm worried. These are stories. They are verbal constructs. In the vector world, there is no I. There is only the position of the asset and the force applied. This detachment is the ultimate psychological armor. If a deal fails, the verbal thinker says, I am a loser. The vector thinker says, the angle of attack was wrong. Adjust trajectory by 10 degrees and re-engage. Do you see the difference? One is a moral judgment that drains energy. The other is a technical adjustment that preserves momentum. The sovereign architect views his own life as a chessboard. The pieces have no feelings. The moves have no morality. There is only the logic of the capture. When you stop taking things personally and start taking them geometrically, you become unkillable. You become a force of nature, and nature does not apologize for its storms. Language is a virus that infects your decision-making loop with the morality of the herd. The herd uses words to enforce conformity. They invented words like greedy, selfish, and obsessed to shame the high performers into slowing down. When you think in words, you inadvertently import these shame subroutines into your own mind. You hesitate to seize a monopoly because a voice in your head says, is that fair? That voice is not yours. It is the echo of your school teacher, your parents, and the media. It is the social sludge clogging your gears. Vector thinking is immoral. Physics does not care about fairness. Gravity does not care if you are a good person. It only cares about mass and distance. When you think in vectors, you align yourself with the laws of physics rather than the laws of society. You ask, do I have the mass to move this obstacle? If yes, move it. If no, accumulate more mass. The question of should disappears. The only question is can. This clarity is terrifying to the weak, but it is liberating to the sovereign. It allows you to execute with a ruthlessness that appears cold, but is actually just efficient. You are not being cruel, you are being precise. You are a surgeon cutting out the cancer of inefficiency, and surgeons do not cry over the blood. The bandwidth of verbal thought is limited by the speed of subvocalization. You can only think as fast as you can talk inside your head, which is roughly 150 words per minute. This is pathetic. The global server operates at the speed of light. High-frequency trading algorithms operate in nanoseconds. If you are stuck in the 150-word-per-minute lane, you are standing still. Vector thinking is high bandwidth. You can process a complex situation, a boardroom full of body language, a balance sheet full of red flags, and a market trend in a single blink of recognition. This is what people call intuition. But it is not magic. It is simply non-verbal processing. It is the brain running on its native machine code rather than the user interface of language. You must train yourself to trust this flash of insight. The verbal mind will try to talk you out of it. It will say, but the data says X, or the experts say Y. The vector mind sees the hidden currents that the data misses. It feels the wobble in the system before the crash. To cultivate this, you must practice silence. You must starve the internal narrator. When you walk down the street, stop naming things. Don't say car, tree, person. See the vectors. See the car's velocity. See the tree's structural tension. See the person's trajectory and intent. Turn your reality into a wireframe simulation of forces. This is the matrix vision. Once you turn it on, you can never go back to the flat, slow world of words. The ultimate cost of thinking in words is that it makes you a consumer of other people's frames. Words are containers for ideas, and whoever defines the words controls the contents. If you think using the words employee, salary, and retirement, you are thinking inside the container of the wage slave. You cannot solve the problem of poverty using the vocabulary of the poor. Vector thinking breaks the containers. You do not see a job, you see a trade of time for capital. You do not see retirement, you see a cessation of cash flow. By stripping away the labels, you see the naked mechanics of the exchange. This allows you to hack the exchange. You realize that salary is just a subscription fee paid to you for your compliance. You realize that retirement is just a mathematically inefficient annuity. The vector thinker deconstructs the world into its base components and reassembles them into a machine that serves him. You become the programmer of your reality, not the user. The user clicks the buttons labeled with words. The programmer writes the code that defines the buttons. Stop reading the labels. Look at the code. Look at the flow of energy. Look at the money lines. That is where the truth is. To operate at the level of the sovereign, you must achieve cognitive decoupling. This is the ability to separate your intellect from your instincts and your emotions. Words fuse them together. When you say, I am angry, you fuse the self with the emotion. When you visualize a vector of high cortisol/adrenaline spike, you objectify the state. You see it as a biochemical event, a red light on the dashboard, not a definition of your soul. You can then manage it technically. Adrenaline is high, requires kinetic discharge or breathing protocol. You treat your body like a biomech suit that you are piloting. The pilot does not get angry at the engine. He adjusts the throttle. This mechanical detachment is crucial for the black day and the quantum apocalypse. When the world is burning, the verbal thinkers will be screaming, praying, and panicking. They will be paralyzed by the narrative of doom. The vector thinker will be calculating the escape route. Fire vector A, crowd density B, exit C, move. You will survive because you did not waste time feeling. You utilize time to calculate. This is the cold, hard love of the architect. You save yourself and your tribe by being a machine when everyone else is a mess. The transition to vector thinking is a painful rewiring. Your brain is addicted to the story. It wants the drama of the internal monologue. You will feel a void when you stop talking to yourself. You will feel blank. This blankness is not emptiness. It is potential. It is the white page before the blueprint is drawn. Embrace the blankness. In that silence, the vectors will start to appear. You will start to see the lines of force connecting people, money, and power. You will see the weak points in the structures around you. You will see the capture vectors, where you can insert yourself and extract value. This is the awakening of the third eye. It is the vision of the conqueror. The conqueror does not write poetry about the mountain. He maps the path to the summit. Stop writing poetry. Start drawing maps. The territory is waiting to be captured, but only by those who can see it for what it is. A geometry of power waiting to be solved. Tactical execution of cognitive sovereignty begins with the violent suppression of the subvocalization mechanism that tethers your processing speed to the physical limits of your vocal cords. You are likely reading this sentence and hearing a voice in your head sounding out the words. That voice is the bottleneck. It is the governor on your engine that limits you to 150 words per minute when your brain is capable of ingesting gigabytes of data in a flash. To break the sound barrier of the mind, you must learn to decouple the visual recognition of a concept from the auditory hallucination of its name. This is not speed reading. This is high-velocity data ingestion. You must train your eyes to scan a page and extract the meaning without ever pronouncing the syllables. You look at a paragraph and you capture the shape of the information. You see the argument as a structure, not a sequence. This requires a deliberate, muscular effort to silence the inner narrator. When the voice starts to speak, you force it to stop. You push through the discomfort of the silence. In that silence, you will find that you can consume a book in an hour. You can consume a contract in minutes. You are bypassing the acoustic rot of the legacy hardware and plugging the fiber optic cable directly into the cortex. This is the first step in upgrading your bandwidth to match the global server. The second tactical shift is the gamification of your visual field into a heads-up display (HUD) of resource flows. When you walk into a room, you do not look at people. You look at nodes of influence. You assign a vector to every player in the game. Who has the highest status? Who has the money? Who is the threat? You visualize these attributes as bars above their heads, like in a video game. This sounds psychotic to the meat, but it is necessary for the architect. You are overlaying a strategic grid onto the chaotic reality. You see the lines of tension between the people. You see the gravity of the leader pulling the attention of the room. You see the void where there is an opportunity to assert dominance. By rendering the social dynamic as geometry, you remove the emotional confusion. You do not worry if they like you. You calculate the angle of approach required to capture the node. If the vector is blocked, you flank. If the vector is open, you strike. This makes you socially lethal. You are playing 3D chess while they are playing tag. You navigate the hierarchy with the cold precision of an algorithm because you are seeing the math behind the smiles. To maintain the vector state, you must implement the war room protocol for decision making. The verbal thinker makes decisions by arguing with himself in the shower. Should I invest? Well, on one hand, this is masturbation. The vector thinker externalizes the data. You use whiteboards. You use maps. You use diagrams. You draw the problem. You cannot lie to a diagram. If the lines do not connect, the deal is bad. If the force is insufficient to move the object, the plan is weak. By translating the abstract worry into a concrete shape, you engage the spatial processing power of your brain, which is millions of years older and stronger than the linguistic center. You look at the shape of your business. Is it a pyramid? Is it a funnel? Is it a flywheel? If it is a mess of squiggly lines, your business is a mess. The act of drawing forces clarity. It forces you to define the vectors. Where is the money coming from? Where is it going? What is the friction? You stare at the board until the solution reveals itself, not as a sentence, but as a path. The path of least resistance, the path of maximum impact, then you execute. You must also cultivate temporal zoom, which is the ability to adjust the time horizon of your vectors. The meat lives in the now of the impulse. The anxiety lives in the tomorrow of the fear. The architect zooms out to the decade and zooms into the second. You visualize your life as a long trajectory. Every action today is a micro adjustment to that trajectory. If you eat the donut, you tilt the vector slightly down towards decay. If you do the workout, you tilt it up towards power. You do not scold yourself with words. I shouldn't eat that. You simply see the geometry of the decline. You see the crash at the end of the curve. This visual consequence is far more powerful than verbal guilt. You steer your life like a ship. You make small, calculated course corrections constantly. You do not wait for the crisis to turn the wheel. You anticipate the drift. This requires you to hold the future state in your mind as a solid object, a destination that is already real, and you are simply closing the distance. The vector is the bridge between the present and the future. Keep the bridge straight. The black box technique is your defense against emotional hijacking. When a crisis hits, the market crashes, the partner betrays you, the plan fails, the verbal mind explodes into a chaotic storm of why me and what if. This is the biological leak that kills you. The vector thinker immediately puts the event into a black box. You seal it off. You strip the story. You look only at the output. Asset value reduced by 40%. Cash flow negative. Threat level critical. You do not judge the event. You do not mourn the event. You accept the new coordinates as the starting point for the next vector. Current position. Deep shit. Required vector. Vertical climb. Fuel status. Low. Action. Jettison cargo. You become the pilot of a crashing plane. Panic is death. Calculation is life. You ruthlessly cut the losses. You ruthlessly fire the traitor. You ruthlessly pivot the product. You do this without a single word of complaint because the complaint is just friction. The machine does not complain. The machine adjusts. Be the machine. You must practice strategic silence in your external communication as well. People who think in words talk too much. They vomit their internal monologue onto others, revealing their weaknesses and their confusion. The vector thinker speaks only to apply force. Every sentence you speak should have a specific objective. Are you informing? Are you commanding? Are you seducing? If the words do not move the vector forward, do not speak them. Silence creates a vacuum that draws people in. It makes you opaque. It makes you a blank screen upon which they project their own fantasies. This gives you leverage. While they are chattering away, filling the air with acoustic rot, you are observing their vectors. You are finding their buttons. You are calculating the price of their soul. When you finally speak, your words hit with the weight of a hammer because they come from the silence of the mountain. You use language not to think, but to strike. The final stage of tactical execution is the integration of System 1 and System 2, thinking into a unified System 3, the flow. System 1 is instinct, fast, fast, animal. System 2 is logic, slow, human. System 3 is the sovereign integration, where the logic becomes instinct. You have drilled the vectors so many times that you no longer need the whiteboard. You can see the geometry in your mind's eye in real time. You walk into a deal and you feel the math. You smell the leverage. This is the state of the master. You are operating at the speed of the animal with the precision of the supercomputer. You have transcended the need for the interface. You are the code. You are the vector. The world is no longer a collection of things. It is a field of energy, and you are the conductor. You direct the flow. You capture the surplus. You build the empire. And you do it all without saying a word to yourself. The transition from words to vectors is the evolution from the primate to the post-human. It is the only way to survive the complexity of the information age. The data stream is too fast for words. If you stay in the verbal loop, you will drown. If you ascend to the vector plane, you will surf the tsunami. The choice is yours. Turn off the voice. Turn on the vision. The map is open. The territory is yours.